Miklat. We're towards the very end of Sefer Yoshua, and I want to begin with a very nice little story that is recounted in different sources by different people, but this is the version that I heard about my Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Ruderman, Zichrono Livracha of Ner Yisrael, and in the 1940s, shortly after he had started the yeshiva in Baltimore, Rav Aaron Cutler had come to America, and Rav Aaron Cutler was trying to raise money for his yeshiva, which became Lakewood. And Rav Ruderman helped him raise money. That's the derech of Gedolei Torah. They don't just limit themselves to their yeshiva, but they'll help other Gedolim do what they have to do. And Rav Aaron was very discouraged because the idea of yeshivas anyway in America was not that well established, and he did not get that much money. But he had read that very night there was some conservative Reform synagogue that had a banquet in which they raised $100,000 in one night, which in those days was a huge, huge amount of money. It was like $1 million. So the Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Ruderman, saw that Rav Aaron was a little bit sabrach, a little discouraged as to why should collecting for Torah be so insignificant in people's eyes, and a Reform synagogue gets $100,000. So Rav Ruderman came up with a thought. The Mishnah says about Ohr Miklat, and you'll see the connection. The Mishnah says in Maseches Makos that there were signs pointing to an Ohr Miklat, right, for a very good reason, meaning to say, if you're a guy who kills b'shogeg and your life is at risk with a goel adam, you want to know where you can get an Ohr Miklat. So there are all sorts of signs, 5 miles to the Ohr Miklat, whatever it would be, plenty of signage, so a person would know, a Rotzeach would know, and therefore he could kind of maximize his protection from the Goel Hadam. Now, when it comes to be Oila Regel, right, people came from all over the Jewish world, all over the diaspora, came to Yerushalayim to be Oila Regel. It does not say anywhere there were signs to the Beis HaMikdash. You had to ask directions. So why was it when it comes to Aliyah L'Regel, the situation is you ask directions? When it comes to Ohr Miklat, we b'dafka don't want you to ask directions, we have signs. So he said the gather is like this. When a person is coming to Yerushalayim to be Oila Regel, that's a Kiddush Hashem, that's a mitzvah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the mitzvah to be publicized in as wide a way as possible. So it says, you want to ask people, where is the way to the Beis HaMikdash? I'm Oila Regel. So that way people will know you're coming to be Oila Regel, etc., etc. And that creates Kiddush Hashem, because you're mefarsem, the idea that you're coming for a mitzvah across as wide a swath of people as possible. By contrast, when a person is a Reitzeach, even though it was a shogeg, there's a certain chilul Hashem in Ritzicha, because as we pointed out, the person does not go to the Ohr Miklat for accidents. A person goes to the Ohr Miklat if they're careless, they didn't look both ways, they went through a stop sign. So there's a certain chilul Hashem that people were not living by the standard of caring for life that a Jew should do. So if you kind of ask people, I need to go to an Ohr Miklat, the pshat is that's a chilul Hashem. So when it comes to a chilul Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu would prefer to keep it as private as possible. So we'll put a lot of signs around, so you're not going to have to ask anybody, so people aren't going to know that you're a Rotzeach. So the Rosh Yeshiva said the same thing here. When something is a good cause, a worthy cause, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it to be spread around as much as possible. So you're not going to get a huge donation from one guy or the other guy. You'll get nickels and dimes from a lot of people. So that way you have to go to a lot of people to be able to be mefarsem what you're doing. Masha'enkein, if a cause is not so great, so sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to get it out of the way. So you'll get 2 or 3 big guys that'll give $1 million each, and that way it's over, finished. It's not going to be around anymore. So he told Rav Aaron, Fakert, the fact that you didn't get all of your money from a few people is not a bad sign. It's actually a sign min hashamayim that Hashem wants you to be mefarsem the mission that you're doing to encourage people. So that's an interesting pshat with the Ohr Miklat. Now, in terms of the kasha, why by Aliyah L'Regel don't we have signs? You ask for directions. By Ohr Miklat, we don't want you to ask for directions. I mean, one might say a very simple situation. We don't want people who are running to an Ir Miklat to identify themselves as people who are running to an Ir Miklat, because the word may spread and the Goel Hadam might find you. Meaning, from a Rotzeach's perspective, he would rather be incognito than asking people, which way is the Ir Miklat, because, So I think al pi pshat there might be even a simpler reason for that. Okay. Now, let me go over the protocol here, because actually the issue of when can a Goel Adam kill a Rotzeach is very, very confusing. According to the Mishnah in Makis, as soon as you killed somebody, whether you did it b'mezid or b'shogeg, you are supposed to go to an Ir Miklat. Because until the Beis Din decides who you are, you go there. So echad shogeg v'echad mezid, they go to an Ir Miklat, and they remain there until they are summoned to come to a Sanhedrin of 23, which paskins dinei nefashos. So you initially go to the Ir Miklat. You are then summoned under armed escort to go to the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin could have 3 possible psukim. If they find there's edim and warning, and you're amazed, they can put you to death. If they find you're amazed, but the warnings weren't properly given, you go home, even though you're chayiv kares b'dei shemayim, but you don't go to the Ir Miklat, nor do you get the death penalty. If you're up kapaskin that you're a shogeg, you go back to the Ir Miklat. Okay? So there is a trip to the Ir Miklat, a trip to the Sanhedrin, a trip back to the Ir Miklat. Now, at any of those points, this is before you actually were sentenced to the Ir Miklat. If the Goel Adam kills you while you're going to the Ir Miklat for the first time, or the Goel Adam kills you when you're going from the Ir Miklat to the Sanhedrin, or the Goel Adam kills you after you've been sentenced by the Sanhedrin to the Ir Miklat and you're going back. So the way the Rambam is magdir in a very interesting way. The Rambam says the Goel Adam is not allowed to kill you under those circumstances. But if he does kill you, he is not punished for it. So it's not a heter of the Goel Adam, but it's not a rishus. It's not a mitzvah for certainly. It's not even a rishus. It is asur, but the Torah paters the Goel Adam from a death penalty. I'll discuss why in a moment. Okay? So this refers to the Goel Adam kills you on the way there, or the Goel Adam kills you on the way to the Sanhedrin, or the Goel Adam kills you on the way back. So it's usher for him to do so, but he's not chayav misa. Now, the problem that the Achrayim discuss, the Chazon Ish discusses, is this. If the Goel Adam kills you, kills the Reitzeach on the initial foray to the Ir Miklat, or on the way back, how does the Goel Adam know, and how do we know that you're even a shogeg? Remember, the Goel Adam is only allowed to kill a Reitzeach b'shogeg. Now, we don't know that this person is a Reitzeach b'shogeg till the Sanhedrin paskin is Reitzeach b'shogeg. In fact, maybe the guy didn't even do it. I mean, what does that mean? A Goel Adam can kill somebody because he thinks he's a Reitzeach b'shogeg? What if the guy didn't do it? What if the Goel Adam is, a case of mistaken identity? Meaning, what does it even mean to say that if the Goel Adam kills somebody before the Sanhedrin paskind that he's a shogeg, the Goel Adam is pater? If the Goel Adam can only kill a Reitzeach b'shogeg, it has not yet been decided that he's a Reitzeach b'shogeg. Right? So that's the issue. It's very, very different than the later thing I'll talk about when he's already sentenced to the Ir Miklat, then he leaves the Ir Miklat. That's a different situation. There we know he's a Reitzeach b'shogeg. But I'm talking about the preliminary back and forth. So there are two mahalchim in the Achrayim. The Chazon Ish, and to me this is a very big chiddush, actually says there can be and there must be an after-the-fact adjudication of this. Meaning, here is the idea. Reuven just killed Shimon because Reuven thinks Shimon murdered his brother B'Shogeg. So Reuven acted as a Gayal Adam before Shimon ever got to the Yer Miklat. Now, the Chazon Ish says, if Shimon was in fact a Rotzeach B'Shogeg, Reuven is Patra, even though he wasn't allowed to do it. But if Shimon is not the Rotzeach B'Shogeg, either because it's not Shogeg or he's not even the Rotzeach, then theoretically Reuven is going to be Chayav for that. So, the Chazon Ish says, after Reuven kills Shimon, Reuven will be up for trial, and the issue will then be decided whether Shimon was a Rotzeach B'Shogeg or not. Following the Chazon Ish's point is, there can be a posthumous determination whether Shimon is a Rotzeach B'Shogeg. Meaning that'll be Reuven's defense. Reuven's defense in his murder trial was, Shimon is a Rotzeach B'Shogeg and I'm a Gayal Adam. That wasn't proven yet. Okay, let's prove it now. The problem with that a little bit is that the notion of vigilantism, meaning let the Gayal Adam do it, and then we'll decide if it's Rotzeach B'Shogeg, is really inconsistent to the way Dinei Nefashos works normally. I mean, let's assume you're not a Gayal Adam. You simply think that somebody was Machal Shabbos or whatever it is, so you kill him ahead of the Beis Din. You can't ask afterwards, let's have a Gemar Din that he was Chayav Misa. At the time you killed him, and there was no Gemar Din. So as a result, some people learn a little differently than the Chazon Ish. They learn, Avada, it's a Davar Pashat, that if a Gayal Hadam kills a Reitzeach before a Sanhedrin has adjudicated him as a Reitzeach B'Shogeg, the Gayal Adam is Vada Chayav Misa, if he was warned or whatever it is. But rather, this is talking about there was a preliminary finding, meaning to say the Sanhedrin already paskined that he was a Rotzeach B'Shogeg. So Inachinami, according to this, the din would change. Meaning, if he's running to the Yer Miklat without any adjudication, the Gayal Adam would be Chayav for killing him. And it's only after he's sentenced and going back. Meaning, there are three preliminary stages. There's the initial going to the Yer Miklat, there's coming out of the Yer Miklat to be adjudicated, and then there's going back. According to the Chazon Ish, the Gayal Adam is Patur in all three of those cases. You see, although he's not allowed to kill, but he's Patur in all three of those cases, and will make a posthumous adjudication of whether the guys are Rotzeach B'Shogeg. According to other Shitas, that's not Shayach. The Gayal Adam will always be Chayav Misa until the Beis Din had paskin that he's a Shogeg. So therefore, on the initial trip, Gayal Adam is going to be Chayav. On coming to the Beis Din, the Gayal Adam is going to be Chayav, and it's only the third prong. He's sentenced and he's sent back. That's when the Gayal Adam is going to be Patur. So you see, this is a machlekes the Chazon Ish and various other Achrayim regarding the preliminary stages. Now, I do want to point out that, like all views, the Gayal Adam does not have a hetcher under these circumstances. Rather, the Torah simply says that because it's heat of passion, if the Gayal Adam did it, he is patur from the death penalty. But not that it's mutter, it is asur d'oraisa for him to kill. Okay. So that's one machlokas. Now we come into a second machlokas. The Rotzeach has now been sentenced, meaning a Sanhedrin of 23 judges has determined that this is a bona fide shogeg, and he's mechuyev to go to the Yer Miklat. He is now sent back to the Yer Miklat, and he must remain in the Yer Miklat until the death of the Kohen Gadol, and we'll talk about that shortly, whether that is a day later or whether that's 50 years later. And if he dies before the Kohen Gadol, he is buried in the city, not to be exhumed to his family plot until the Kohen Gadol dies, the Seder. Now, as long as he's in the Yer Miklat, he's protected. If the Gadol Adam kills him in the Yer Miklat, the Gadol Adam is Chayav Misa. That's for sure, right? That's very simple. Number two, it is also the case that the Arei Miklat have a techum around them of 2,000 amos. Okay, so a radius of 2,000 amos around the Yer Miklat, even though he's not in a walled city anymore, he is also protected. Now, I don't mean de facto. I mean, if the guy wants to kill him, he'll kill him. But I mean, halachically, if the Gadol Adam kills him, the Gadol Adam is chayav misa. This techum is measured initially. Basically, it's a square, meaning you have the Levite city. Remember, all of the Arei Miklat, all of the 48 Arei Leviim are Arei Miklat. You initially go 2,000 amos on each side, draw a circle, and then square the circle. So it's a little larger than the circle itself. A square, 2,000 amos, 2,000 amos. Okay. What if the Rotzeach takes one step out of the 2,000 amos? Right? He's walking around, taking his evening walk, and he goes beyond the Techum. So the Rambam's lashon here is hitir atzmo lamisa. He has released his life. He has forfeited his life. And here, the Rambam has a curious ruling. And this is very, very strange. If the Rotzeach left the Techum b'mezid, meaning he knew he was going beyond the Techum for whatever reason, the Gadol Hadam has rishus to kill him. So again, there actually is an opinion in the Gemara that it's a mitzvah. The Rambam does not paskin like that. But it's a rishus. So again, be sure you understand the difference between killing him on the way to the Yer Miklat and killing him once he's in the Yer Miklat and leaves b'mezid. If you kill him on the way to the Yer Miklat, that is aser. That is aser. But the Gadol Adam is not chayav misa. If, on the other hand, b'mezid, he leaves the techum of the Yer Miklat, the Gadol Adam lechatchila, it's not a mitzvah, it's not a chiyuv, but the Gadol Adam lechatchila has the right to kill him. And even more than that, and anyone else who kills him will not be chayav misa for it. Okay, so again, to be sure to summarize the two categories, if he's killed on the way to the Yer Miklat, the Gadol Adam is not allowed to do it, but he's not chayav misa. If anybody else would do it, he would be chayav misa. When he's in the Yer Miklat and he leaves b'mezid, I'll talk about leaving b'shogeg, so then everybody gets one higher level. The Gadol Adam is allowed to kill him lechatchila, and anyone else is not allowed to kill him, but if they killed him, they're not chayav. So this is talking about where the person, the Rotzeach, left the techum of the Yer Miklat b'mezid. What about if the Rotzeach left the techum of the Yer Miklat b'shogeg? Meaning he didn't realize, this could easily happen. He didn't realize that he was 2,001 amos from the wall of the city. But the Gayal Adam is watching and measuring and surveying. Right? The Gayal Adam, as you can imagine, is waiting for this opportunity. So what is the halacha? So here, the Rambam says something very, 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 very difficult, very enigmatic, and all the Mefarshim are in great confusion as to what the Rambam means. The Rambam says, if a Reitzeach leaves the Techum of the Ir Miklat, the Techum, the 2,000 Amos of the Ir Miklat, B'Shogeg, and the Gayal Adam kills him, which he wasn't not allowed to do, the Gayal Adam goes into Galus, goes to Ir Miklat himself. Gayla al Yada. Well, wait a second here. The Ir Miklat is for people who kill b'shogeg. So what is the Rambam? Is the Rambam saying if a Gayal Hadam b'mezid kills a guy who left the Ir Miklat b'shogeg, the Gayal Hadam who killed b'mezid goes to an Ir Miklat? Yeah, the guy who was killed left b'shogeg, but the guy who killed did it b'mezid. Why should the guy who killed go to the Ir Miklat? So the Chazon Ish, which is a little unusual for the Chazon Ish, simply says, for sure, there's a line missing in the Rambam. Got to put it in. It's kind of an easy answer, actually. He says that the Rambam said the following. In other words, what's the case? The Rotseach left the city b'shogeg, or left the Tchum b'shogeg. So the Rambam says, if the Gayal Adam kills him, he goes to the Ir Miklat. So says the Rambam, you put in this. If the Gayal Adam did it b'mezid, he would be narag. If the Gayal Adam did it b'shogeg, he would go to the Ir Miklat. In other words, the Rambam doesn't mean to say the Gayal Adam always goes to the Ir Miklat. He just means to say the Gayal Adam is a murderer. And what's the law of a murderer? If you do it b'mezid, you're chayiv misa, assuming there's warning. And if you do it b'shogeg, you go to the Ir Miklat. In other words, according to the Chazon Ish, the Rambam is, the Chazon Ish is changing a girsa. That's a big thing. But in terms of, he's making the Rambam very simple. The Rambam is simply making the point. It's still a chiddush that the heter of a Gayal Hadam to kill a Rotseach who leaves the Ir Miklat is only when the Rotseach leaves b'mezid. When the Rotseach leaves b'shogeg, the Gayal Hadam is a murderer. What's the law of a murderer? If he does it b'mezid, he's chayav misa. That's the Hosafa of the Chazon Ish. If he does it b'shogeg, he goes to an Ir Miklat. Okay, so the larger point is very clear. The larger point is, and this is a little unusual, the heter of the Gayal Hadam to kill the Reitzeach is only when the Reitzeach leaves the Tchum b'mezid. If the Rotseach leaves the Techum b'shogeg, the Gayal Hadam not only is not permitted to kill him, but the Gayal Hadam is a Rotseach mamish, chayav misa if he does it b'mezid, chayav galus Ir Miklat if he does it b'shogeg. So the point is, this is different than the case where you killed him on the way to the Ir Miklat. If you kill him on the way to the Ir Miklat, so ein achinami, you're not allowed to do it. But if you did it, you're not chayav any punishment. Right? So killing the Rotseach who leaves the city b'shogeg is actually going to be stricter than killing him on the way to the Ir Miklat. Again, I'm not sure I get all of the svaris myself here, but this is going to be the difference. If I kill him on the way to the Ir Miklat, it's usher, but there's no punishment. If I kill him, if he left the Ir Miklat b'shogeg, according to the way the Chazon Ish learns the Rambam, you're a Rotzeach Gomer. But again, if you look in the newer Rambams, they're called the Shapsi Frankel Rambams in the back of each volume, they have all the different gersos, because over the hundreds of years, there are many different nuschos of the Rambam, manuscripts and the like, and they do point out that although the Chazon Ish is Magia, the Rambam in this way, there is no manuscript that offers this, which is a little disheartening. Sometimes, in fact, most of the time, the Chazon Ish proposes a tikkun of a girsa, so usually you can find that there were early manuscripts that had it, meaning he was mechavein to an earlier version, and that's kind of a good proof that the emendation is correct. Here, you run into a little bit of trouble because the Chazon Ish's Haggah in the Rambam is not supported by any. Again, I mean that doesn't mean it's wrong, Chas v'shalom. It just means, but it's not supported by any manuscript. So it is a bit of a problem. But again, let me just point out: if you're not Magia like the Chazon Ish, you have a very, very odd halacha that's very hard to understand, and that is, the Rambam writes, the Gayal Hadam who kills the Rotzeach, who leaves B'Shoigeh, the Rotzeach goes to the the Gayal Hadam goes to the Yer Mikvah. That's mashma, without the Chazon Ish's Haggah, even if he did it b'mezid. And that's a very, very schwer thing. So just be aware of it. So because if you look up the Rambam in Perikei Hilchos Rotzeach and you just read the halacha, it's going to hit you. It's going to hit you as something that simply it's hard to make sense of without the Chazon Ish's Haggah. Yeah.
I understand the Chazon Ish holds that if the new Sefarim are found, or they were written a long time ago, they're found, they don't matter or anything.
Yeah, that's the Chazon Ish's Shita.
So,
yeah.
Why is that? Why is a mistake in the gear set up the same thing? As in, why saying we found a new manuscript, this manuscript is wrong? Why would you say that's also a shkacha protest and that's just what it is? And why would you?
Okay, that's a good aura, just to be sure people know what you're talking about. Over the past 150, 200 years, and certainly the last 100 years especially, so many new manuscripts of Rishonim were discovered that were actually unknown by earlier generations. A lot of Me'iris, for example, were not necessarily known. And we also have different manuscripts of the Gemara itself, and the Rambam and the like. And the question becomes, should that change, let's say, how we paskin halacha? Because, for example, let's say Rav Yosef Karo was machriya halacha based on rov rishonim going a certain way. And Rav Yosef Karo was looking at 10 rishonim, and he had like a 7-3. I'm giving you an example. So let's assume with all the new stuff that we account, we now have 25 rishonim. So instead of a 7 and a 3, we now have it the other direction. We have 20 versus 7. So l'char, you might say, had the Beis Yosef been aware of all of this new stuff, he would have been machriya differently. So now that we have the new stuff, should we change the halacha? So some took the position, we have new evidence, we have new yedios, so memela, the halacha has to be readjusted in different ways. The Chazon Ish famously took the position that we will not be meshana, the Messiah of Torah Shebaal Peh, based on new things that are discovered, because he said the determination of what was lost and what was available was in itself an aspect of hashgacha pratis. So if Rav Yosef Karo only had, I'm making up a number, only had 10 rishonim on a given point, and didn't have the other 25, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want him to use the other 25 in the machriya halacha. So Eino Chinami, for whatever reason, he gives us access to it for our own learning, but we're not going to go backwards and override the idea of the Messiah of how halacha was nikva. This was the Chazon Ish, and again, his whole cheshbon was that things that were lost were also nichlal in the hashgacha of what should become part of the halachic process and what should not become part of the halachic process. Maybe I shouldn't say that. There's a series of green volumes in the Beis Medrash. It's called Otzer Meforshei HaTalmud, Have you ever seen them? Green volumes on selected Masechtas. And these are volumes that bring up like every parish like ever written on everything. I mean, it's in a way it's confusing to learn. I mean, like in every line of Gemara, you're going to have, 50, 60, 70 things. So somebody once went to Refuge, and these were Perushim that were lost for hundreds and hundreds of years. So somebody asked Rav Hutner if he was impressed with the Sefer, whatever it is. It's kind of a nasty remark. I really shouldn't say it, but I'll say it b'shem Rav Hutner. Rav Hutner said, if Perushim were lost for hundreds of years, maybe there was a reason. Meaning to say, our job is not necessarily to go and look for new Perushim on things. If the Balei Messiah had the Ramban and the Rashba and the Ritva and the Ran, and this is how they were Koveya the Halachos, then that should be our job, is to kind of go with that and not necessarily look for new things that were not utilized by earlier Dairis. So you're asking a question, so again, that's kind of just a little hakdama on this Miksaya. So you're asking a question, now we have the Chazon Ish, and the Chazon Ish is the Rambam for hundreds and hundreds of years says such and such a thing, and the Chazon Ish says it can't be right. So there has to be a mistake. So is the Chazon Ish using something new? So I would differentiate the following. Here, it's the opposite of what I said. I was asking a kasha on the Chazon Ish that there's no manuscript evidence. The truth is, the Chazon Ish would say, I don't care if there would be manuscript evidence. Now, the Chazon Ish would not be Mishana based on that. But I think in Svara, logic, that's the part of Torah Sheba'al Peh, meaning the Chazon Ish says, Chachmei HaTorah always have the kayach to understand the Torah through the prism of Svara. It's the other way around, meaning what I was saying would have been good evidence. The Chazon Ish maybe would not have paid attention to it.
So what he holds though in this case, he's not actually changing what it says, not changing the girsa. He's just saying how you would understand it with like more background.
He says he's adding words. He says he is adding a sentence. Basically, he's claiming the problem is this. I mean, and maybe you've experienced this yourself. One of the very common problems in copying something is if the same word appears on two different lines. Mm-hmm. So what often happens is, after you write the word the first time, you then start writing the words that appear on the second line, because your eyes, right? So the Chazon Ish says the word shogeg originally appeared twice in the Rambam. In other words, im yotza b'shogeg, right? And then it says, the way the Chazon Ish adds, im hargai b'mezid narag, im hargo b'shogeg gaila. In other words, going in the Gaila Dam. The Chazon Ish claims the matik, a copyist, put the word gaila after the first reference to shogeg. Im yotza b'shogeg gaila. And therefore skip the whole. Right, happens to a Balkari all the time. Right, if the Torah has the same word in a different line, the Balkari will sometimes, skip the line. His eyes will go to the second line. So the Chazon Ish's explanation for how the mistake originated is a logical explanation. The way manuscripts are copied. I'm not sure. Again, without a PowerPoint, it's hard to see this. But in other words, the sentence should have read, Im yotza b'shogeg, im hargei b'mezid nereg alav, u'b'shogeg gaila. But the matik put the word gaila after the first shogeg and left out the whole sentence, im hargei b'mezid nereg. Im hargo b'mezid nereg. 4 words, left out four words. But the problem. Again, I'm not here to argue with the Chazon Ish. The problem is that, how could this mistake become so universal? Meaning to say, you would. I understand if some manuscripts had it, some manuscripts didn't have it. You could say, somebody copied it wrong, and this happened a lot. Things were copied wrong, but l'chara, there's no manuscript that has the Chazon Ish's girsa. Yeah.
So even if it did happen through a mistake, why wouldn't you just say that the mistake was shugach process?
Well, I think the Chazon Ish's argument is that the din of lo b'shamayim, he says that the Chachmei HaTorah are always allowed to use their svara, meaning that doesn't get superseded. Meaning we don't use external evidence. We don't use chitzoniistic evidence, but the kayach of svara we do use, and the Chazon Ish held that the literal reading of the Rambam is not logical. But again, as I say, it is an unusual procedure. Changing a girsa is something that is a very last resort, and even the Chazon Ish does not do it that often. But this is an interesting example of where he does so. Okay, so these are the different madregas. So we talked about really two machloksim today. One is the machlokas, are you allowed to kill? Not allowed, you're not allowed to, but if the Gail Adam kills the Refuge on the way to the Yer Miklat before he's been adjudicated, or on the way to the Sanhedrin, do I say at that point he's Stama Refuge? Or can he claim a right to a posthumous adjudication of whether the victim was a Refuge b'Shegeg? That's one machlokas. Chazon Ish actually says yes. And the second machlokas is how to understand the Rambam when the Refuge leaves the Yer Miklat b'Shegeg and the Gail Adam kills him. The Chazon Ish simply learns he's a Refuge Gamor, b'Mezid he's Narag, b'Shegeg he's Gaila. Our gersh in the Rambam is that he's Gaila no matter what, but like both readings, he is not allowed to kill the Refuge at that point, that's for sure. Yitzchak b'Mezid, he's actually allowed to, and even anybody who kills him is not allowed to, but they're not going to be Narag. Okay, so that's kind of the general rule of what happens with respect to Yer Miklat. Okay, so Mr. Hashem, tomorrow we'll talk a little bit about the Kohen Gadol and the role of the Kohen Gadol in allowing the Refuge to leave the Yer Miklat. So, okay.
Thanks so much, Rav.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this Ohr Somayach production. To find out more and to partner in our mission, please visit ohr.edu.